Welcome and good morning. I am Josh Cogliati, today's worship associate and speaker. Reverend Carson will be back next week. Today is our November 22nd online service. Daniel Schwen and I bring you this service from the church's sanctuary. So welcome this morning, this day, and this opportunity to be together in virtual community. Our weekly announcements are, first we would like everyone to please sign into the chat box to the right of your screen. This will let us know who is joining us. We will be having sorrows, concerns, and joys, but that will happen after the time for all ages. At that time, we'll read those that came in earlier by email, and Daniel will also read any other sorrows, concerns, and joys posted in the chat box. When you share one in the chat box, please indicate it if it's a sorrow, concern, or joy. And there is a delay between when they are posted and when we can read them, so please post them before sorrows, concerns, and joys time. We have some announcements from our weekly update. Note that if you want to receive this via email, there is a sign up on the web page. Reverend Kevin Carson is doing office hours, so email him at minister@idahofallsuu.org if you wish to meet him. He is also if you would like a hymnal, either we can borrow one from this church, or he is also arranging to see if we have enough interest in this to buy some ones with a bulk discount from the UUA. So email minister@idahofallsuu.org if you are interested in either of those. And finally, before we get started, we need to mention how we stay afloat. We are currently in the midst of our pledge drive. There are several ways, so you may have received a pledge card in the mail. If so, please mail that back to us. We are also looking for donations on the website. Our church website has a give button where you can donate via PayPal, or you can also mail in a check to the church's post office box. And now, as part of our pledge drive, we have a testimonial.
I pledge to the Unitarian Church in Idaho Falls because whether in person or virtually, I feel I'm in the midst of tolerance, love, and activism.
We will now move into the sacred time of our worship. As I ring the peace bowl 3 times, take deep breaths and relax so we can move into worship. For this moment in time, let go of your anxieties, fears, and worries. Be in this moment. We will begin our service with the Prelude. Since we are not all together, I will read our church covenant for us all. Feel free to say it along with me. Love is the spirit of this community, and service its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. We will now be lighting our chalice. If you have a chalice or candle available at your own house, please light yours with me. Flame of fire, spark of the universe that warmed our ancestral hearth, agent of life and death, symbol of truth and freedom, we strive to understand ourselves and our earthly home. Out of the stars in their flight, out of the dust of eternity, here have we come. Stardust and sunlight mingling through time and through space. Out of the stars have we come, up from time. Out of the stars have we come. Time out of time before time, in the vastness of space, earth spun to orbit the sun. Earth with the thunder of mountains newborn, the boiling of seas. Earth warmed by sun, lit by sunlight. This is our home. Out of the stars have we come. Mystery hidden in mystery, back through all time, mystery rising from rocks in the storms and the sea. Out of the stars rising from rocks and the sea, kindled by sunlight on earth, arose life. Ponder this in your heart, ponder with awe. Out of the sea to the land, out of the shadows came ferns. Out of the shallows came ferns. Out of the sea to the land, up from darkness to light, rising to walk and to fly. Out of the sea trembled life. Ponder this thing in your heart. Life up from the sea. Eyes to behold, throats to sing, mates to love. Life from the sea, warmed by the sun, washed by the rain. Life from within, giving birth, rose to love. This is the marvel of time. This is the marvel of space. Out of the stars swung the earth. Life from earth rose to love. This is the marvel of life, rising to see and to know. Out of your heart, cry wonder. Sing that we live. From Robert T. Weston. And now we have our opening hymn, 398, To See the World, followed by Time for All Ages.
We start with a cat. We put a box on the cat. We take a Geiger counter and we hook it in the box, so if the Geiger counter detects a decay in 5 minutes, it opens a sleeping potion in the box. So, classically, there are two possibilities. Either we open the box to find a very annoyed cat, or we open the box to find a sleeping cat. Of course, the box needs to be soundproof, and otherwise completely insulated from us, or we figure out if the cat is asleep or awake before we open the box. What really happens, so far as we can tell, with quantum mechanics? Well, since a nuclear decay is a quantum event that has two ways to go, it does both. So inside the box, the cat is both asleep and awake. If the box is completely insulated, then we on the outside are looking at a box with a cat that is both asleep and awake at the same time. Now, what happens when we look inside the box? At that point, our own quantum reality branches, and there are now two of us, one who is entangled on the branch where the cat is asleep, and one who is entangled on the branch where the cat is awake. So now there are two Joshes, who were more or less exactly the same, until Josh opens the box, and one sees an awake cat, and one sees an asleep cat.
This is a very special time in our congregation where each of us has an opportunity to share major events in our lives, our joys, our concerns, and our sorrows, so we can all be uplifted by the UU community. As Daniel reads the sorrows, concerns, and joys that are in our chat box, I will light a candle. One more candle for all those sorrows, concerns, and joys we hold in our hearts and are not ready to share at this time. Know we lift up our love for you, and we are all in this together. The world is not always as it seems. If we walk around outside, it mostly looks like the world is flat, not a sphere. It doesn't feel like we're traveling hundreds of miles per hour around the Earth while we are sitting still, but we are as the Earth spins. And the Earth itself travels at about 67,000 miles per hour around the Sun. It doesn't really feel like we are more or less on a spherical ball going 67,000 miles per hour, but we are. There's another aspect of our world that is not easily observable. It's called quantum mechanics. As it was originally understood, for some physics, what happened was random. If you set up the experiments exactly alike, it would give different results each time you ran it. An example would be that our uranium atom will randomly decay at some point, but whether that is in 1 second, or in a billion years, or in a trillion years, cannot be predicted. Einstein didn't like this interpretation because it involved randomness and said that God does not play dice with the universe. Quantum mechanics, as it originally was understood, included randomness, unlike any other physics theory. Now, before I continue, I will note that there is some controversy over how quantum mechanics is interpreted, and also that quantum mechanics and general relativity are in some cases contradictory. And so there must be a better theory out there than the one we have. We know there is still more to learn about physics. Now, Einstein died in 1955, and so unfortunately he did not live long enough to hear of a solution to the randomness. In 1957, Hugh Everett III published his PhD thesis on the evolution of quantum mechanics. Everett showed that following the Schrödinger equation of the wave function, it will appear that the wave function has collapsed into a random value, but what actually happens is that all the possibilities continue and it only looks like some possibilities have vanished, causing a random result. Quantum gravitational theorist Bryce DeWitt originally complained to Hugh Everett that he agreed with the math, but it didn't feel like he was constantly splitting into parallel versions of himself. Physicist Max Tegmark wrote, Everett had responded with a question. Do you feel like you're orbiting the sun at 30,000 kilometers per second? Touché, Bryce had explained, and conceded defeat on the spot. Just as classical physics predicts that both we're zooming around the sun and that we won't feel it, Everett showed that collapse-free quantum mechanics predicts that both were splitting and we won't feel it. Later on, Bryce DeWitt named this the many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics. Basically, every time that quantum randomness would occur, instead the world branches, and all the possibilities happen. So there is no randomness, and the universe just splits into branches, one for each possibility. It feels random to us because, say we watch if an atom decays one half-life 10 times. Most of the time, we end up on a branch where sometimes the atom we were watching decayed and sometimes it didn't. So it looks random. As an example, we have Casey at the bat. The pitcher throws the ball flies to home, and Casey swings. In some quantum branches, Casey hits the ball, and in some, Casey misses. Where do the quantum branches happen? I haven't seen a rigorous calculation of Casey at the bat, and there are some unknowns that would affect the results, such as are protons eternal or do they have a half-life? Those type of things are still being debated. But from the Heisenberg uncertainty standpoint, we can predict where the ball will be well under 1 millimeter of uncertainty in position and 1 millisecond of uncertainty in the time. So to the accuracy needed to determine if the bat hits the ball is effectively deterministic. From when the ball is thrown to when the ball gets to the plate, Newtonian physics is a quite accurate approximation. And so both quantum mechanics and Newtonian physics would predict the same path of the ball so far as hitting or missing the ball is concerned. Where does the uncertainty take place? In the two places where the uncertainty gets amplified, where a small change gets amplified. Human brains are using chemistry inside them, so at some point what happens in them comes down to did a certain neuron fire or not. This depends on the exact position of molecules in relation to other molecules, and so is dependent on small changes in position, and can be different with high probability. So the quantum branches split depending on which signals are amplified and are then transmitted by the nerves to the pitcher's muscles and to Casey's muscles. Of course, there's nothing magical about nerves. A photomultiplier tube would have the same effect of amplification. Now, if a robot was designed to hit the ball, it could be designed to be effectively perfect, to hit the ball in all the quantum branches, or at least make a strike less than a 1 in a million event. Alternatively, a robot could be designed so that in some quantum branches it hit the ball and in others it misses the ball. Of course, this robot would have a much lower batting average than the better designed one. Human brains design, to the extent that they are quantumly random, is sort of a design flaw since evolution is an imperfect designer. Good decisions should be dependent on the evidence and careful thought. Randomness in making a decision is a flaw. In baseball, the decision if and where to swing the bat needs to be done at nearly the limit of human speed of thought, so there probably is some quantum randomness in it. As I see it, close decisions where it could have gone either way would have more chances of being in different quantum branches. What does this all mean? Well, I suppose you can use quantum random number generator to run a lottery, and then you can guarantee that everyone will win, just not in necessarily in the branch you're in. On a slightly more serious note, you can just pretend that quantum mechanics doesn't exist. Make decisions like there is only one result, and as long as you aren't doing something like transistor design, you'll never know the difference. However, it is interesting to know there are lots of other U's out there. If you want to be sure to try both paths, you could make decisions with a Geiger counter or some other quantum randomness. But unfortunately, each U only gets to remember the branch you were on, since you very quickly become entangled with the one branch, and we can't find out about the others at that point. This all comes out feeling very normal. Just like walking on the earth doesn't feel like walking on a merry-go-round, even though both are spinning. I think it is a little comforting and a little scary that somewhere out there is a Josh who is living a life where everything physically possible has gone wrong, and also a Josh who is living a life where everything physically possible has gone right, and every shade in between. The universe is vast. It contains multitudes. In one sense, this is sort of a Groundhog Day movie reincarnation. You get to live the same life over and over again with all the possible variations. In another sense, this mirrors a heaven and hell view, except that everyone is in their own personal hell and their own personal heaven, and all the span in between. However, Unlike Buddhist or Christian concepts of reincarnation and heaven and hell, there is no underlying justice driving the result, just random seeming physics. Carl Sagan called living all these possible lives the Haldane consolation, but I'm not sure how much of a consolation this actually is. I suppose the most consoling thing I can say about it is, for any branch where a young person dies, there is almost certainly a branch where they live. In Philosophy Club, I mentioned that I think there are two different definitions of when someone dies. The first definition is when someone dies is when they die in a single branch. The second definition is that someone dies when they die in the last branch, which will probably be much later. I suspect there are many branches where humanity, or the vast majority of us, do not exist. For example, there have been multiple chances for the United States and the Soviet Union to have had an all-out nuclear war. The fact we don't remember it does not mean it hasn't happened. It just means that it hasn't happened on this branch. This might result in people finding themselves luckier than would be physically expected for near-death experiences, since all the branches happen. So if there is a branch where you live, you will perceive it just as a near miss, even if it was only a 1 in a million chance you could survive. Humanity as a whole will find ourselves luckier than we really are, since we can look back and see we survived every single time. When in reality, the past might be littered with multiple times when the other branches of humanity went extinct. I find it personally very fascinating that all the quantum possibilities happen. I also find this both hopeful and terrifying. There are both branches where things are wonderful and branches where things are horrible. I was asked if I only believe in multiple worlds because I am afraid of death. I don't think so. I think that multiple worlds make sense scientifically. I don't think multiple worlds is just wishful thinking. What it does do for me is even when I am most pessimistic and think that there is almost no chance that humanity survives, that anything I care about will survive, I can be pretty sure that there will be a few branches where humanity or their descendants survive. So it does give me some hope. Now for our closing hymn, 297, The Star of Truth.
The star of truth but dimly shines behind the veiling clouds of night, but every searching eye divines some partial glimmer of its light. The certainty for which we crave, no mortal ones can ever know. Uncharted waters we must brave, and face whatever winds may blow. Though for safe harbor we may long, we must not let our courage fail. And though the winds of doubt blow strong, upon the trackless ocean sail. From honest doubt we shall not flee, nor fetter the inquiring mind. For where the hearts of all are free, a truer faith we there shall find.
I will now extinguish our chalice with the following words. If you wish, join me in reciting the reading. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Before I do closing words and postlude, we will have our coffee hour after the end of the service, so I invite you to participate in that. The postlude is a song I first heard in the United Methodist Church, and it works surprisingly well if you substitute in the time evolution of Schrödinger's equation for God. But now for our closing words. It is eternity now. I am in the midst of it. It is about me, in the sunshine. I am in it, as a butterfly in the night-laden air. Nothing has to come. It is now. Now is eternity. Now is the immortal life. And now our postlude.